I take the issue of Native American rights pretty seriously. You know, I'm not exactly as militant about the whole issue of mascots as I used to be, although I am still against them, and I don't think the jokes are really that funny. Although they are funny in this context with Elizabeth Warren, who Trump calls Pocahontas and other people call Hiawatha and stuff. You have to admit, in this situation, I really think it is funny. I'm sorry, but I am human, and I'm not going to deny that these jokes are hilarious. And there are endless memes from today, and I'd like you guys to send me the memes, to the email or to the Discord. And it's just a joke that compounds on itself, and it's all Elizabeth Warren's fault that she released a DNA test today that revealed that she's as much as 1/1024th American Indian or 1/64th. Now, to be clear, I know for a fact that my heritage is 50% Ukrainian and 50% Iraqi. Now, a lot of American Indians don't know exactly, or people that have American Indian heritage, they don't know exactly how deep their heritage is or how much, because of course they were involved in a lot of land seizures. The government, of course, moved many of them, and people were adopted or forced to be forced away from their parents, things like that. So what Elizabeth Warren is doing here is basically cynical nonsense, trying to pretend that she has any Native American heritage. But here we go. This is her video trying to discuss her heritage.
She's Native American. And I said, Pocahontas.
Pocahontas, I apologize to you. I apologize. To you, I apologize. To the fake Pocahontas, I won't apologize.
I hear some of you are Republicans.
I am a Republican, registered.
Yes.
What do you think of him calling her Pocahontas?
Well, I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I think it's silly. I think it's crap.
He's talking about stuff he doesn't have any idea about.
It's offensive to me, not just as Betsy's cousin, but as a Native American.
They feel like an attack on me and my mom, but mostly on my grandmother. And my mama's not around to defend herself.
My mother was born in eastern Oklahoma. It had been Indian territory until just a few years earlier when it had become a state. My daddy always said he fell head over heels in love with my mother the first time he saw her. But my daddy's parents, the Herrings, were bitterly opposed to their marrying because my mother's family, the Reeds, was part Native American. This sort of discrimination was common at the time. So when my mama was 19 and my daddy was 20, they eloped. And together they built a family, my 3 older brothers and me. But how did Dad Herring feel about Daddy marrying Mother?
Oh, it was not the happiest time, I'm sure. I think they had a real riot over that.
My family grew up on the ragged edge of the middle class. My 3 brothers all went off to the military when I was just a kid. My life then took some twists and turns, as life does. I went to college, dropped out, married at 19, went to commuter college, had a kid, graduated from law school, had another kid, got divorced, married Bruce, and started teaching. I used my mama's grit to get through commuter college and law school. I used my daddy's relentless optimism when I was balancing babies and books. But my background played no role in my hiring.
What does Warren translate into Cherokee as? Spreading bull?
They call her Pocahontas.
No criticism from me.
You know Elizabeth Warren, right?
What most people find offensive is Senator Warren lying about her heritage to advance her career.
Do you remember her heritage ever coming up during the hiring process?
No. Her heritage had no bearing on her hiring, period.
I was chairing the committee that year. If ethnicity had been part of the discussion, I would have known about it.
Her name with respect to racial minority hires, no, never.
That's nonsense. Her reputation as a teacher was stellar. We decided to hire her because she was the best there was on the market.
Elizabeth was revered as perhaps the best teacher on the faculty.
She is a tremendous teacher, an important scholar.
She was a trailblazer.
She is the hardest working
person I have probably ever come across.
She's just been a giant in the field. She's probably one of the 100 best law professors of the last half century. And to try to belittle that with this nonsense is very unfair.
And we will very gently take that kid and we will slowly toss it. To be very gentle. And we will say, I will give you $1 million to your favorite charity, paid for by Trump, if you take the test and it shows you're an Indian, you know.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Warren. Is Dr. Bustamante in, please?
Hi, I'm Carlos Bustamante, and I've advised companies in the direct-to-consumer space.
So you can basically see this is staged nonsense. There's no reason why they would both have cameras, both in their, this was known at the beginning, and to pretend that this is some sort of surprise or some sort of unknown outcome is ridiculous. Why would there be a camera in his office if he didn't know he was getting a phone call?
Including Ancestry.com, 23andMe, and Helix. In the senator's genome, we did find 5 segments of Native American ancestry with very high confidence, where we believe the error rate is less than 1 in 1,000.
Now, the president likes to call my mom a liar. What do the facts say?
The facts suggest that you absolutely have a Native American ancestor in your pedigree.
We come from Oklahoma. When we were born, they said these are the parents, these are your grandparents, these are your aunts and uncles. Their word was always their bond. They were honest.
That's right. Well, that's what Betsy's been saying.
I'm not enrolled in a tribe, and only tribes determine tribal citizenship. I understand and respect that distinction, but my family history is my family history.
Who, Pocahontas?
This isn't just about casual racism, war hoops and tomahawk chops. Native communities have faced discrimination, neglect, and violence for generations. And Trump can say whatever he wants about me. But mocking Native Americans or any group in order to try to get at me, that's not what America stands for. Some people have questioned my heritage and my family history. Maybe they do it to insult me. Maybe they do it to distract from the kinds of changes I'm fighting for and the kind of change I'm trying to bring to Washington. Maybe they do it because they think politics is a blood sport. But my parents were real people. The love they shared, the struggles they endured, the family they built, the story they lived will always be etched on my heart. And no one, not even the President of the United States, will ever take it away from me.
All right, that was a bunch of nonsense, and I'll explain to you why. First of all, let's look at some comments here, if there are any. I don't know if she... So, one person put 1.56% Native American. No DNA researcher would even consider that significant. And another person says, I have 2% Native American DNA, according to 23andMe, and I would never think of calling myself a Native American. And, people are just ridiculing this. It's hilarious. It says, so this person says, Michael Myers. It's My Kill Myers. I love that. It's Halloween season. She's actually an even bigger fraud. Correction, due to a math error or a story about Elizabeth Warren misstated the ancestry percentage of a potential 10th generation relative. It should be 1/1024th. The Globe said in its correction. That would put the percentage at 0.097%. Okay, and I don't know if I already said this, but I know exactly how much of my heritage, I'm half Iraqi on one side, my mom's side, and I'm half Ukrainian on my dad's side. That's about it. There's nothing good about being on either side. It's okay, but there's no real, I guess it's fine. But here, this is Cherokee Nation says, and, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts couldn't possibly have thought this week would end with her apologizing to the Cherokee Nation. But at the rate things are going, that's exactly what she'll have to do to get out of the mess that she has created for herself. The Massachusetts senator kicked off Monday by sharing the results of a DNA test that she and her fans in the news media say vindicates her from criticisms that she tried to benefit undeservedly from claiming minority status when she taught at Harvard Law School. Warren has claimed for years that she is of Cherokee Indian descent. She even used to tell a story alleging her parents eloped because of the discrimination suffered by her supposedly part Cherokee mother. However, the DNA report shows that Warren is maybe 6 or 10 generations removed from having any ties to the Native American ancestry, if she has any at all, depending on whether her great-great-great-great-grandmother was indeed a Native American, which neither the report nor Warren can say. The senator would be 1/64th Native American, but she could just as well easily be 1,024th Native American. Then there is the problem that the study wasn't based on Native American DNA from within the United States, but on Mexican, Peruvian, and Colombian DNA. That's kind of interesting. In other words, Warren's claim to Cherokee heritage is thin, to put it politely. It's so thin, in fact, that the actual Cherokee Nation released a statement Monday nuking Warren's supposedly vindicating report from orbit. It says a DNA test is useless to determine tribal citizenship. Current DNA tests do not even distinguish whether a person's ancestors were indigenous to North or South America. Sovereign tribal nations set their own legal requirements for citizenship, and while DNA tests can be used to determine lineage, such as paternity to an individual, it is not evidence for tribal affiliation, said Cherokee Nation Secretary of State Chuck Hoskin Jr. His statement added, using a DNA test to lay claim to any connection to the Cherokee Nation or any tribal nation, even vaguely, is inappropriate and wrong. It makes a mockery out of DNA tests and its legitimate uses while also dishonoring legitimate tribal governments and their citizens whose ancestors are well documented and whose heritage is proven. Senator Warren is undermining tribal interests with her continued claims of tribal heritage. And to think that this day began with Warren attempting to dunk on President Trump with the results of her test. The senator's report is a massive self-own. Yeah, that's what I said, almost the same thing. I said it was an own goal. By putting numbers to her ancestral claims and by revealing just how thin her ties to the Cherokee Nation really are, the senator has shined a blinding spotlight on the absurdity of a mess that is 100% of her own making. There is no scenario where the fact that she was referred to as Harvard Law School's first woman of color, or the fact that she described herself as a minority for several years on a law professor's listing, do not feel like cruel jokes, especially considering that the best she can say is that she is maybe excuse me, she is maybe 1/64th Native American. But now Warren has a much bigger dilemma on her hands. The Cherokee Nation itself is crying foul in her response to her DNA test, leaving her with no good options. Does Warren drop the matter altogether and admit error, seeking forgiveness from a marginalized people? If she does, she will hand Trump a major victory that he will absolutely lord over her for years to come. Or does Warren go to war with the Cherokee Nation, demanding that they apologize to her? Yeah, that's not going to happen. That'll be a great look, a white U.S. senator putting Native Americans in their place. Warren could have avoided all of this had she responded to the DNA test by simply saying, "I'm sorry, my family led me to believe I was closer to the Cherokee Nation than I really am. I regret the judgment," etc. But Warren wanted so badly to put up a point up on the board against the president. She began this week probably thinking she would win the love and approval of the Democratic base. She will most likely end this week asking forgiveness from the Cherokee Nation. Yeah, if she has any integrity. Whoever advised her to tout the DNA test should be out of a job immediately. So this, I believe, is essentially the end of Elizabeth Warren's any aspirations she has for national office. And it could have gone much, much different for many reasons. Okay, when Elizabeth Warren was elected in 2012, she was elected. That was a year that President Obama was running for re-election. She had a great, headwind that she was, or I guess it would be a trade wind. That was propelling her into office. She was up against the Republican incumbent, Scott Brown, who wasn't very well funded, and the Republicans weren't really trying to keep Massachusetts, so she easily defeated him. And Brown himself had won in a very big upset about a year or so earlier when Ted Kennedy had died. And the Democrats basically were sandbagging that race and weren't even trying, and they thought that they had it locked up, and he basically scooted in. So Elizabeth Warren was the beneficiary in her career, running for higher office, of President Obama's coattails. Okay, it's simply, and she should thank Obama every day for what he gave her, because as a law professor and as somebody who is an activist, she is responsible for very little of substance. Okay, she has created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The CFPB is a huge waste of money. It's not accountable. And basically what it does is it harasses private businesses and forces them to give up, to basically pay extortion money to the U.S. government and not to the consumer. It actually does not protect the consumer. Elizabeth Warren is actually kind of a disgrace to anybody who believes in the ideals of the left, okay? And she is actually emblematic of what actually happens when somebody in the left gets into a position of responsibility, okay? I know that there's a lot of people who are progressives who might think that I'm being hyperbolic, but if you look at her record, that's pretty much the way it is. I would say that there are people on the left who are advocates like Ralph Nader that I still admire, even though I'm not a person on the left. Another major error of her career was in 2016, Warren did not decide to run for office, for the presidency, I mean. She basically bent her knee to the establishment. She never endorsed a candidate through the primaries. And well, I believe at the end she ended up endorsing Hillary Clinton, when in reality, in order for the good of the Democratic Party, what Elizabeth Warren should have done was indeed to endorse Sanders if she wasn't going to run it herself. If she was not going to run herself, she should have endorsed Bernie Sanders. She would have been a very good candidate to be either vice president or one of his cabinet members, possibly. And you know, this is coming from somebody, I would never want this to happen. But imagine Elizabeth Warren as Secretary of the Treasury or as Attorney General. It would have been very easy for her to get into one of those positions should Bernie Sanders have been elected president. But also, for that matter, if Hillary Clinton had been elected president, I think she would have probably been up for a cabinet post in one of those positions. So what she basically did was she took the path of least resistance, ironically. She's all about the resistance now. But in 2016, and throughout her Senate career, Elizabeth Warren has basically been a crony of the Obama-Clinton machine. She's not really been an advocate for consumers and those victims of corporate greed that she talked about when she was at Harvard or when she was at University of Pennsylvania. She's essentially about as big of a turncoat as you can get. And I've criticized Bernie Sanders a lot, but I would say that unlike Bernie Sanders, who has taken a lot of personal attacks from members of the liberal establishment, political machines, and the media and everything, calling him a lot of names and getting very rough with him at times. Sometimes they give him an easy time, but other times they basically blame him for everything, a la blaming his followers for basically throwing the election to Donald Trump, and also claiming that his campaign was hacked by Russia. I would say this. Elizabeth Warren has never had the courage and never had the actual integrity to stand up and fight a real opponent of substance and take the blows that are needed in order to change anything. Whether you agree with the progressive side of politics or not, Elizabeth Warren is a huge coward compared to anybody else that you compare to, that you can throw into this equation, whether it's Bernie Sanders, whether it is, for example, Kamala Harris or anybody. Elizabeth Warren might be the symbol of the rot in the Democratic Party. But, of course, there's a lot of other people that you could pick for that. You could pick Barack Obama, who himself, while he was president, he didn't enact any of those progressive changes that he was talking about. If you're a progressive, I would say the first person you should be mad at would be Barack Obama, and then the second person would be probably somebody like Elizabeth Warren for not running in 2016 or endorsing Bernie Sanders. Of course, given this personal history and given these pernicious lies that she's engaged in, why would somebody want to vote for this fraud? Why would anybody want this person who cannot even stand up and admit that they were living a lie? Why would they want them to serve as president of their country? Okay, yeah, and I know a lot of you are saying, "Oh, Donald Trump lives a life of lies." You know, if you're one of these people who's, watching here, who's not a fan of the channel or who's watching the first time, this is totally different. Okay, Elizabeth Warren has been using this as a crutch for her entire career, and she's basically, she's taken umbrage of anybody that questions her entire story and everything. Even though they'll go after Trump for his dad and his sister, and I think his sister is a federal judge, and his drunk brother, and also, of course, they attack his kids, and they call for one of his kids to be thrown into a cage with pedophiles. I think it is time. Elizabeth Warren, she has that old scolding auntie look. It's time to take the gloves off and tell her, you don't fucking get to make the rules over what political decency is, okay? Bernie Sanders did take a lot of shit from people. Okay, that's one thing I'll give him credit for. And I've given him plenty of shit. It's time for you to wipe that smug look off your face and fucking apologize and shut the fuck up. Please like the video, contribute to the Patreon account, share the video, comment when it uploads. Also, subscribe to the second channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds, and subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you guys later.